Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm your host, Gina Cavalli. Did you know that in the state of Georgia, there's a little over 2 million people with disabilities, with developmental disabilities as well? It's a big, big number. So it's really important that we have people, self-advocates, that we have people fighting for them on the state floor when it comes to lobbying and the issues that really concern the families and the individuals themselves. This show, we have a lot to cover today. With me, D'Arcy Robb, the Executive Director of the Georgia Council of Developmental Disabilities, otherwise known as the GCDD. Welcome to the show, D'Arcy. How you doing?
Hey, Gina. I am great. Thank you so much for having me on today.
We have so much to cover. Let's get right into what the GCDD does cover. What is it? What do you guys do?
So thanks for asking. So at the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, we are what's known as a DD Council. All U.S. states and territories have a DD Council, along with a Protection and Advocacy Agency and UCEDS, which are University Centers for Excellence on Developmental Disabilities. So all of these agencies were created by a bipartisan piece of federal legislation from the 70s known as the DD Act. So here at GCDD, our mission is to make the kinds of social and policy changes so that people with developmental disabilities and their families can live, learn, work, play, and worship in their communities here in Georgia. So we approach disability from a very inclusive lens. We approach what we do from a very community-focused lens. And our work really breaks down into systems change, so trying to change the system, improve it for folks with DD and their families. We also do a lot of advocacy, and we do a lot of capacity building. That's kind of us in a nutshell.
Yeah, with more than 2 million people here in the state of Georgia with disabilities, do we know how many have developmental disabilities on that number?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the statistic that I think is the most accurate is that there are, and I want to check it afterward, but there are just over 250,000 families, approximately 250,000 families caregiving for someone with intellectual or developmental disabilities. So we think that's the
Yeah.
most accurate number. There's an older stat from a decade or more ago that's just under 200,000. But I think that 250,000 number is probably the best estimate.
And I know that the GCDD has a lot of different missions like real homes, real careers, real learning. Do you care to share what some of those are broken down a little bit further for families watching?
Sure. I think it really comes back to our focus of here at GCDD, we put our emphasis on including everyone in the community. We truly believe, and we have seen, and I feel very fortunate in my life to have learned that communities are stronger when they include everyone. So for something like Real Homes, for example, we want all people with developmental disabilities to live in their own homes and homes of their choice. So rather than advocate for continuing with group homes or, God forbid, a return to institutions, we really want to see people owning their own homes, making their own choices, having the keys to their own places. So we're really for that when it comes to their homes, to employment, to education. That's really our focus.
I love that. And that is broken down on the GCDD website too. All of the different missions, the real learning and the homes and everything that we just mentioned here and a little bit more. With me today, D'Arcy Robb, the Executive Director at the Georgia Council of Developmental Disabilities. When we get back, we're going to find out and kind of compare how Georgia is faring compared to other states. Stay with me.
Hi, I'm Lear Gilmars. Thanks to our friends at
Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm your host, Gina Cavalli. With me today, the lovely D'Arcy Robb, the Executive Director over at the Georgia Council of Developmental Disabilities, otherwise known as the GCDD. Now, this is a big one because we've got lots of other states out there. How is Georgia doing for our families and individuals with disabilities compared to the rest?
Ooh, that's a really big question. So
And broad, too.
big and broad. So I'll start with what I see as the good. I feel like we are a state of diamond mines in Georgia, meaning that there are
Okay.
some individual programs and certainly some individual people and families and providers that are doing really excellent work. One of our examples that I am admittedly very biased towards is inclusive post-secondary education. And those are where students with intellectual disabilities attend college with their peers. And they go to typical classes, they have internships, they get additional supports. Georgia is a national leader in that.
I love it. Georgia Tech,
Yep,
Kennesaw.
yep.
I mean, really, Georgia State. All of these people have been on my show too, so this is great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So right. So IPSC, we're really in a great position, and I am biased because funds do flow from the state through GCDD to support those programs.
Well, then what are some of the big problems? If we're doing some things right, what are we kind of doing wrong?
Well, as a state, we need to really prioritize making a bigger investment in people with developmental disabilities and their families. And the biggest example I can point to is if you look at our state's fiscal effort, which this is kind of a wonky term, but fiscal effort is a term that means for every $1,000 of personal income, per capita income in this state, how much money are we putting into something? What's our fiscal effort? When you look at our fiscal effort for adult developmental disability services, the unfortunate reality is that Georgia is one of the lowest in the country. We are about 60% of the US average, and we're one of the lowest in the Southeast. So we're really trying to raise awareness about that, because what that means in reality is, I think you're aware, I think most folks in the community are aware, we have a waiting list of over 7,000 people for the now and comp waiver.
Oh my gosh.
We don't put enough money in. Our provider rates, there's a big rate study that's gone on. We're really hopeful it's going to get through this year. But right now, the rates that we pay providers to support people with developmental disabilities are very low. So they struggle to keep staff. So even somebody who does have a waiver may not actually be getting services because they can't find anyone to support them. So we've got some real challenges.
What is do you happen to know what the average rate is for pay for a DPS?
Sure. So for a DSP, a direct support professional.
Or DSP.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Acronym city, right? A DSP, a direct support professional. So I don't have the average, but I can give you a pretty good range. So there's a rate that's sort of presumed, effectively baked into what we pay now under now and comp. And that is $10.62 an hour. I want to be clear that is not, $10.62 an hour.
Shut the front door, D'Arcy.
Now, I will say that there are providers that pay more, and we have gotten some additional federal money in the past few years. So a lot of folks, it's like 11 or 12 bucks an hour, maybe 13. That's still really low, isn't it?
Okay, so I have to kind of go off on a tangent here.
Do it.
People can't support their families on $10 and $11 an hour. People can't afford a place to live on just $10 to $11 an hour, much less the food and electric and everything else that they need to go through. So what you're telling me, let's give it a nice range, $10 to $15. We're asking folks to go in and be direct service providers for people with disabilities, right? People who need 24-hour assistance and care, bathing, washing, feeding, pick whatever it is that DSP is doing. We're giving them $14 an hour.
14 bucks is on the high end, but yes.
Okay, 14 bucks on that. And they have 2 children to support. Oh, wait, and they're a single parent too. How do they do it? How can we, as a state, justify paying that little when you could go to McDonald's, flip burgers, and have zero responsibility, except for making the Big Mac right?
Yep. No, Gina, you've nailed it on the head. This is what we're hearing. It's so low that even people who really want to do the work, people who have, who are called to care, and people who have a special connection with the person they support, this is what we're hearing from providers. And what I've been hearing since I started this job is that some of their best DSPs come to them and say, I love my work. I love working with, Kevin, Deshawn, D'Arcy, whoever it is that I'm supporting. I can't feed my family. I'm going to go work at Target.
So where is that initial breakdown to where that funding is so very low?
So that comes back to the provider rate study. So we're talking Medicaid. So Medicaid is state and federal joint funding, right? And so last year, or earlier this year rather, DBHDD, which is the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, they concluded a rate study. So they took a very comprehensive look at the rates that they're paying for all services under the NOW and the COMP waivers, which are the waivers for Georgians with significant impact of their developmental disabilities. The rate study that they came up with, so it's like we know what we pay now, the rate study is what we think we should be paying. There's a big gap between the two. Specifically, it would cost $107 million a year from the state side to fully fund this rate study. Now, that's a lot of money, of course, but you also got to remember we're talking about, in the scope of about a $32 billion state budget, we're also talking about something that, I'll be honest, Gina, I don't think I have ever had a conversation with a Georgian who does not support making this investment. I mean, I'm sure they're out there. Let's be real. There are people of all stripes and beliefs.
I would pay higher taxes to make sure that somebody could get, bathed and clothed and fed every day that needed it. It's just, that's a no-brainer. And that's shame on our government, both on the local, state, and national level, for not taking care of people with disabilities, because those people need that. It just doesn't. There's a disconnect somewhere, and we have to find it, D'Arcy, for sure. Because with 7,000 people waiting to just get the waiver itself, then to know the help really isn't going to be there, or it's going to be, you could go through a DSP every month because people will change jobs. I bet the turnover rate's pretty high.
It is very high. Yes, it is. It's a little below 50% last time I checked. And the vacancy rate at provider agencies can be about 30%. So no, I mean, this is a huge focus of our advocacy this year. I really encourage people because, this isn't sustainable. We are coupling wages and waivers together because we know, number one, it's a high bar to qualify for a waiver in the state. Like it's a high bar. So 7,000 people waiting, we got to get more supports out there. But, it's not any good having a waiver if nobody's coming to support you. So that's why we're also talking about wages, and we're pushing really hard for the state to invest in our folks. So I really want to encourage people, go to gcdd.org and get connected. We have a lot of ways for you to take action, from as simple as getting alerts, especially during the legislative session this winter. And you can just literally click a button and email your legislators, all the way to, you can do trainings with us and come down to the Capitol and learn how to build friendships with your lawmakers. So we really have a broad variety of advocacy activities, but you're right. We're in a crisis. So I really encourage everybody to jump right in.
Sitting with me today, D'Arcy Robb, the Executive Director at the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, GCDD. When we get back, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the strategic plan that they have going on for the next 5 years and ways that you and I can make this happen. Stay with me.
I'm Lear Gillenwaters. Thanks for checking out this episode of Life with the Spectrum. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll always see the newest episodes when they come out.
Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm your host, Gina Cavalli. With me today, D'Arcy Robb, the Executive Director of the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities. We were just talking before we went to break about how people can get involved. And I know you're looking, with the strategic plan that you have in place for the next 5 years, really looking for advocates to get out there and help with this. So again, what are the different layers that people can get involved, and where do they go, and who can they talk with, and where can we get them signed up today?
So many ways. Thanks, Gina. So again, go to gcdd.org. So you can sign up to be part of our advocacy network. You can follow us in social media. I would say that's like the first level of involvement, is just having that awareness, getting our emails, follow our Instagram, our Facebook, sign up for our advocacy network.
And this would be particularly important for families who do and are involved with someone with a developmental disability.
It is. I mean, we center on self-advocates, so on folks with developmental disabilities and their family members. Absolutely. So above all, self-advocates, family members, please. But we're not exclusive to that. If you have a good friend, and I also want to emphasize family members doesn't just mean parents. Parents are huge and critical, but we also welcome and invite siblings, aunts and uncles, neighbors, providers, really anyone with a stake in this community. I would encourage to, tune in, get our alerts. again, you can be involved and have an impact with fairly low effort. Really just click a button, send an email. That would be level 1.
And then where do they go?
So I would say if people want to be more involved, start looking for those opportunities. We send out a lot. One of our most well-known is advocacy days. So every year during the legislative session, we have 3 opportunities for people to come down to the state capitol with us. And we do an online training. We all meet together in a common location. We have food and water for people. And we will break out in small groups and go with you to talk to legislators about particular issues. So that's a really great way of having an impact and also not feeling like you're thrown into this chaotic world alone. We actually just did a training last week for folks to talk with their legislators this summer. And so that would be a good one.
And don't you think it's important for like a family who's dealing with a developmental disability to be able to share their story? I think when legislators or any politician or anybody sees it firsthand and feels that compassion, that that care, that love for that individual, it kind of just translates and makes people get it,
It
So
totally does.
certainly putting yourself in front of somebody else and telling your truth, telling your story, that can resonate a long, long way.
100%. Yeah, no, some of the very most effective advocacy comes directly from self-advocates. So a few years ago, okay, more than a few, 5 to 10 years ago, when we were first piloting advocacy days, there was a gentleman by the name of Joshua. Joshua is a dynamic advocate from West Georgia, and he works several jobs in his community, and he's just, one of those guys who knows everybody. Joshua has a disability. So Joshua met his state senator, and the state senator, looks and realizes that Joshua does have a disability. That's part of, who he proudly is. And the state senator actually thinks of a day program in their hometown. And the senator said, "Oh, I know a place where you might like to go," and starts talking about this day program. Well, Joshua gives it a moment and then politely interrupts him and says, "Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. But I've already been there and I actually like going to my job more."
Ah.
Boom. This senator was just, talk about a way to educate people on employment first.
Yeah.
That made the point better than I ever could. And the senator just became a big fan of this young man and a supporter of him. And that helped open his mind to, oh, you've got a life. You don't want or need to go to a day program. There is nobody better to talk about the hope and the opportunity and the messiness and the challenges of your life than you.
Are you actively seeking members for self-advocacy? Is this like a year-round thing, making a difference like that?
So, yeah, that's a great question. We are actually about to go into seeking members. So we are governed by a council, and 60% of our council members are either self-advocates, folks with disabilities, or family members of people with developmental disabilities. So we are actually going to be doing that in the coming months, is seeking new members. We will be putting that application on our website. We have one now. We're going to look at a little bit of revamping of it. It's still valid if folks want to jump there now. But that is something we're looking to do in the next few months. And that's a really great way to be involved long-term and at a deeper level if people are interested in being council members.
And you also have a great publication, both digital and in print. It's called Making a Difference, correct?
Yes, Making a Difference.
What exactly can people expect to find when they subscribe to it?
So Making a Difference, it was a print magazine for years. It's now digital, and we've kind of grown it. It's not technically a magazine anymore because there are video features and other fun things. But Making a Difference, we do quarterly. And it's really, we try to make it informative and just a great source of news for folks in the developmental disability community and with an interest in our community across Georgia. We typically will have October is National Disability Employment Month, and so we've got a lot of employment information coming out in the October issue. But that's just a really, great way to take a deeper dive into what's going on.
D'Arcy, is there anything else that we're missing that we need to get the message out about?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Let's see. I think the biggest thing I would say, Gina, is we are at such a tremendous point in history for people with disabilities.
We are.
I've been reading Judy Heumann's autobiography. She was, are you familiar with Judy?
A little bit.
So she was one of our great disability advocates, grew up, I believe, in the 1940s and 50s in New York City. Some of the things that she went through, her parents had to fight for years for her to go to typical public school because she used a wheelchair. And so then cut to, later the 60s and 70s. So she, gets to school, does well, goes to college, gets her teaching degree. The New York City public schools wouldn't hire her. She was fully qualified. They said she was a safety risk because she used a wheelchair. No joke. And many of many folks can remember those times. So that I say that because it gives perspective on how far we've come. But I think the most important thing is for people we still have a lot of what I would describe as very old school, and in some cases well-intentioned, in other cases perhaps not, but attitudes about what people with disabilities can and can't do and can and can't be. I just really encourage folks, do not allow yourself to get stuck in or defined by that. I don't know how to put it more articulately than I am so blessed to know so many people who were effectively told, you can't do this, you can't do that, live your life in this box, and the best you can hope for is to be kept safe. And people have just blown out of that. So, when you don't listen to the naysayers who don't see your potential or your child's, I think that's incredibly important.
So it's time to get involved with the GCDD, and you can do that online at gcdd.org. D'Arcy Robb, thank you so much for sitting with me today, the Executive Director at the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, and I so appreciate your time. I know it's valuable.
No, thanks, Gina. I've loved being here, and please get involved. We have a lot of fun, and like I said, we try to have, low-level involvement, medium, all the way up to high. We get the most done as advocates, as a community, and together. So I really, really encourage people to jump on in.
Just like D'Arcy said, there's several different ways to get involved with the GCDD, and I recommend going online to the gcdd.org website. You can find out about their missions, their real homes, their real careers, and real learning opportunities. You can become a self-advocate. You can go and be on the legislative floor and promote what we need, which is funding and money to get these 7,000 people waiting for this waiver off the list and get these DSPs paid more. It really starts with the GCDD, and every state has a DDD. So please, if you're not here in Georgia, look for the DDD in your state and start small and work yourself up. It's all parent-driven at the end of the day, isn't it? Yeah, I'm Gina. Thanks so much for checking out Life with the Spectrum. Make sure you like, comment, hit share, subscribe right here below. If there's somebody I need to be speaking with, please hit me at my website, gina@gcast.com. You can go over and get my email at gcast.com, or you can put it right here in the comments below on Life with the Spectrum. I appreciate you taking each and every week out, even if it's 20 minutes out of your day, to watch these episodes as we continue to live this crazy journey called life. I appreciate you checking in with Life with the Spectrum. See ya.